When I was younger, I used to like toys, toy cars. I used to like model ships, model planes, model cars. I still do. Still make them a little bit. Although my enjoyment and fascination of it has changed through the years. But I noticed that my enjoyment and satisfaction of toys have evolved. I say evolved because I don't have the same fascination with them like I used to. I'll still go to the store and my wife would be amazed that I would be looking at toy cars. And I would just look at them and I'd be like, man, I can't believe I had such fascination of this when I was 5 or 6 or 7. And I'll look at baby toys and I'll marvel that so many years ago that I would play with them. But I don't play with them now. No adult male plays with baby toys. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. But if you think back upon your childhood, and I don't think it would be too hard to think back upon our childhood. Do you remember such fascination you had with such toys? And even video games. I mean, some of us still play video games. But if I were to ask you, I don't think we play a few certain video games like we were when we were younger. Maybe we've retrograded enough that you'll play Space Invaders. If you remember such a time when you played Space Invaders, I do. Or Asteroids, when you had, back in the 80s, the Atari 2600. What is that, Atari 2600? Like, ancient. But what about Tetris? Again, something that most of us, if we were to do retro, we would play Tetris or Mario Brothers. But if I were to ask you, I don't think they hold such fascination like they did when we were younger. Maybe we'll play occasionally, but it doesn't have a hold on us like they used to. And that is the very nature of things, right? Is that they're shiny and new at the moment, but then as time goes by, as you get older, as the object gets older and older, such fascination doesn't have a hold on us anymore. That's why old things are old, right? And new things are new. Because old things are old because, not only because of age and time, but because of luster and shine. Not a shiny new toy anymore. It's an old thing because it has lost its hold on us. It's now vintage. It's now antique. So then our satisfaction also ages with time too. The same type of satisfaction that will satisfy and satiate this person is very different from when I was 5 than now. Same thing doesn't have a hold on me. Same things don't have a hold on you when you were younger versus when you're older. So satisfaction also changes over time. Such is the nature of things. Such is the nature of you. You change. That change brings about changing in appetites changing in what satisfies, changing in what gives you fascination. That's what makes new, new, and old, old. It's the fact that things change over time. But you see, the Bible doesn't change. See, we believe in a God that does not change ever. He is the same as yesterday, today, and forever. That we hold these truths in our hearts. That God is eternal because He doesn't change. And because He doesn't change, He's not new, is He? He's old. He's antique. He's not a shiny new car. He's not a shiny new toy. He doesn't have the same luster and shine. So then, you can understand why when we read some Bible passages in the Psalms, or in the Proverbs, or in Ecclesiastes, and we're struck how the biblical writers would say, taste and eat that the Lord is good. How sweet and savory His voice. See, that doesn't sound like a God who is old and antique. Sounds like a God who is new, who still holds its luster, its shine, still holds its fascination. Not things and objects. And if God was a thing or an object, He would always, always shine like new. Shine like new. So I want us to understand what it is that God is trying to fascinate us and satisfy us with. See, He could satisfy us with all the things that this world can give to us. And we would be satisfied for a day or more. But we would need new things, new objects to satisfy. Every week, month, year. What it is that God is trying to get us to understand that what satisfies more than that. See, that's what this story is about, I believe. It is not simply an old story. It is our story. There's a difference in quality, though, versus this story and our story. That differentiation is crucial. Because when we read here in 2 Kings, we find that story to be very, very much like our human story, which is about life. Which is everything about life and death. To lose something so precious, which is not old, but precious. Old and new, yet precious. We will never say to a child that you can ever grow to become so that I'm bored of you. So one exception to things in our natural world is that to a thing such as an object, such as a child, we will never say, I am bored of you. That you will always grow so old so that I am not satisfied by you. What parent will want to say that? What mother, what father would say that to their child? That I have grown so weary of you that you have lost its luster on me. So then there is one exception to this rule about satisfaction, is it not? Is that objects and things, such as children, born of your body, coming from your body, are precious forever. It is why parents to this day still consider you their child, even though you're grown. You're grown up. You may even have children of your own, and yet your parents will still say, you are still the child of my youth. You're still my baby boy, my baby girl. Always, always. And that never changes. That fascination, that hold, that satisfaction. That explains why life, human life, is so distinct, so important, that we will want to cherish it and save it. But we can't have this one-to-one equivalence here. We will be mistaken if we did. In this story, we would have this child of the Shunammite. We don't know the child's name. We just know that this child from last Sunday was a miracle child. That Elisha went to this place called Shunem, which was 20 miles or some odd miles away from population, sent there, I believe, by God, and went to this couple who did not have children. And in the course of his interaction with them, promises them a child. And a child is born. Now this miracle baby grows up in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 18 and following. And as he is grown, we don't know what happens to him. We don't know if he had a disease. We don't know if he got an injury or something. But something happens to him. He's going out into the field to his father one day. And according to verse 19, the child said to his father, "Oh, my head, my head." And the father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." And then in verse 20 of 2 Kings chapter 4. And when the father had lifted his son and brought him to his mother, the child sat on her lap till noon, and then he died. So now this miracle baby is dead. And if you're wondering, why would the father give the child to his mother? And why would the mother cradle her son? Well, like all mothers, this is not any different from any other mother. I don't think she's acting any way particularly different from any other mother. And I don't think the father is acting in any particularly way different from any other father. Father carried his son, brought him to the mother. The mother cradled her child, cradled him, babied him, and then he died. Now that loss had to have been the most grievous loss for her. Because if we remember what this woman said to Elisha when Elisha promised her that you would have a child, she said, "Do not lie to me. Do not lie, O man of God." And what happened is that she conceived. So immediately, what does she do as a grieving mother who lost her miracle baby? She immediately goes to find Elisha. And when she gets there, this is the interaction. He says to her, verse 26, "Is all well with you? Is all well with your husband? Is all well with your child?" And she answered, "All is well." She's lying. Why? Why is she lying? She's lying because she is devastated to reveal the truth about her condition. Yet she came all the way over to the man of God. All is well? Then what are you doing here? There's a little bit of a discrepancy, a little bit of contradiction of your action and your tone and your voice, right? There's a contradiction in what you're doing over here versus over there, and your words. All is well, and yet you're here. You're here. Verse 27. And when she came to the mountain, to the man of God, she caught hold of his feet. That's Elisha's feet. And Gehazi came to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone, for she is in bitter distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. This is a hint at we cannot make a one-for-one equivalence to what is happening in the story to our life. This is a hint. It's an obvious hint, but it's a hint, nevertheless. It's not direct. It's very indirect. You have to read between the lines here. He is a man of God, but he is a man. He's a human being. He's not any more man than you. He's not any more human being than any of us. He is yet a man. Yes, he speaks for God. Yes, he's a prophet. That doesn't mean he's semi-divine. Nor is he of divine essence and quality. Why? Because the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. That should clue you in to the purpose of this story. There's a greater story hidden underneath all of this. There's a greater story hidden in here. It's cloaked in shadow and it's mysterious. You don't know exactly what it is because it's not revealed. But that's what the Old Testament is about. It talks about something, but you don't know what. It talks about someone, but you don't know who. You know it's the Messiah, but it's some sort of arbitrary and, amorphous figure, almost like an amoeba. It moves, but you can't figure it out because it moves so much. And like shadow, you can't pinpoint its exact definition, its exact reference, its exact form and shape. You can look at it, you can stare at it, you can study it, but like all shadows, it's dark, mysterious, and veiled. That's what this is. It's veiled. We don't know what, but it's veiled. So this woman says, did I ask my Lord for a son? No, she didn't. Did I ask my Lord for a son? No, you didn't. If you read the previous story, you should be fascinated by the fact that she never said, I wanted a child. Matter of fact, she never said, for everything that Elisha could have given her, she never said, I wanted a kid. So who is it that gave her a child? God did. Did I not say, do not deceive me? Now, do you see now what's happening in this story? You should be perplexed. I'm perplexed. I'm perplexed. You should be mystified. Oh, wait a second. Pastor Dan, you're right. She never did ask for a child. So then why did God give her a child only so that that child die? Oh my God. That's stupefyingly Stupid of God to promise something and then take it from her. What kind of God does that? This is the same God we worship. This is the same God who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, he's doing something marvelous, but we don't know what. That's what he's doing. He's doing something marvelous, but we don't know what. Now, we're sitting here, we're reading this from the point of view of perspective from looking down on the situation that already happened. In order for us to understand what's happening in this story, we have to actually go into the story and find out, oh my God, I don't think I want to be this woman. No, I don't want to be this woman. I want to be the person who observes what happens next. But I don't want to be the woman who is in this story. Now pause. Pause. I want you to pause. That explains everything about your life right now. I want to be the person who observes a person who's going through distress and what happens at the end. I don't want to be the person who is going through distress now. I want to be that person. So do you. We all do. You'd be lying if you said, yes, I love distress. Stress in my life and the struggles and the burdens of life, I love them. Please bring me more. No one wants that. What we want is what's going to happen through all of that. I want to know and I want to find out what happens after I go through all of that. Put me at a place where I am going through those woods. Don't put me in a place where I'm in the woods and searching for what it is that I need to do. See, that is what I would call dissatisfaction. See, that's dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction is when you're not satisfied with the things that's happening in your life. You can only be satisfied when it comes out the other side. But you see, I want to ask you a question. This is a very, very pertinent question. Can you ever be satisfied? Just be honest with yourself. Can you ever be satisfied, certainly, if you didn't go through that distress to come out the other side? Only to find out that all of that stress and burden through life is what gave you satisfaction at the end of it? Now, I'm just talking about human life here. I'm not talking about the Christian life. I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about life in general. When you're going through the woods of distress and struggle and the burden, and then whether it takes a day, a month, a year, or 2 years, and then you go through that distress and you come out the other side, are you not satisfied? What happens to you at the end? The answer is yes, you are. And you could talk about college and the struggles through exams and the 4 years or whatever, and then we have two guys who graduated from medical school. They'll tell you what struggle really is. We have a firefighter in the audience in our congregation who will tell you what struggling through life is when he has to fight fires. And then we have myriad of other people who go through struggle of the day-to-day life, of work, of teaching, of nursing, of working in clinics, hospitals. At the end of that day, and you go home, what is your story? Sometimes it's dissatisfaction. Oh, why am I in this job? Other times, it's the answer to the fulfillment of why you're here. It's as if the two click. You're tired and you're weary. You're bone weary. But you say, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing it. Satisfaction. That's satisfaction. But you see, you don't have that satisfaction every day. That's the point. That's the point. You don't have satisfaction every day. Matter of fact, you don't have satisfaction every second of every day. Every second of every day. Every moment of every day. Only when you catch yourself, then you say, satisfaction. See, that is our story. That is not this story. It's talking about a type. It's talking about a type. And that type is found here, verse 33. So Elisha went in and shuts the door behind the two of them, and he prays to the Lord. And what he does next should shock you, because it's almost as if, I say almost, because it's not exactly it, but almost as if Elisha's bearing the cross for this child. I'm just saying it out loud like you're thinking it. You're like, wait a second, this is just weird. Okay, that's weird. Let's read the weird. Okay, verse 34. Then he went up and lay on the child. Now, I don't know if he laid on the child like this or like this, but it's definitely like this. Why? Because his mouth was on his mouth, his eyes was on his eyes, his hands on his hands, and stretched himself upon him. Now, how do you stretch someone? How do you stretch yourself on a child? On a person? You can either stretch yourself like this or like this. But it's definitely not like this. That's what I know. This would be laying on someone. Okay? Your hands to your side like this. So, I don't know if it's this or this. But if it's this, oh my God. You know what this is. But what he is doing is representative. What he is doing is symbolic. Symbolic of somebody we yet not know. Does it say anywhere here Jesus Christ, Messiah? No. Does it say anywhere here about the cross? No. It's indirect. Matter of fact, I don't even say indirect. It's like hidden in here. You look at it, you read it, and you go, that is just weird, Pastor Dan. Like, what is he doing? He is literally taking on the personification of this child. Or you can even say literally, he is taking on the person of this dead child. He is taking on the dead child's deadness, if you will. And the flesh of the child became warm. He's not alive yet. It's warm. He's warm, not alive, because he's not woken up. So Elisha gets up, walks back and forth in the house, and went up and stretched himself upon him again. Then the child sneezed 7 times. A cursory word search of this word sneeze in Hebrew, zorar, means literally to diffuse a foreign substance. Literally to sneeze out a foreign substance. So in order for a person to sneeze, anyone, you and me, this child, to sneeze, you must inhale a foreign substance that causes disruption in your nasal passages so that you will sneeze or cough. So what happened to this child is that he received literally a stranger. He received a stranger, and then what happened? On the seventh time, the child opened his eyes. Now, we're going to sit here and we go, again, weird. But I don't know if this is talking about Jesus. Right. Because there's no one-to-one direct correlation between this story and Jesus. But see, that's my point. It's incomplete. It's incomplete. So if this is an incomplete story, do you understand why we cannot make a one-to-one equivalence between that story and today? We can't say, if I just pray to God, all of my life stressors will be gone and my life will be perfect. Or you could even go on and say, miracles happen all the time. Miracle will happen here. If I just pray hard enough, God will save my life. That kind of one-to-one equivalence cannot take place. Why? Because the story is incomplete. I want to ask you a question. What purpose does this stranger have to this boy? We don't know. The story ends with the child waking up and the mother taking him. Why is it so important that the stranger be received in order for this child to gain life? Again, incomplete. That answer is not here in the story. We know that the child received a stranger in order for him to sneeze 7 times, and then he woke up. That we know, but we don't know why that is important for him to regain life. We just know that it is for him to gain life. Incomplete. It doesn't capture the whole story. It's like there's a chain of events, if you want to say a chain of events, and it breaks. Or basically a circle, except there's a break in the circle. You're going into a circle and then... Or a movie. You're watching a movie. And you're watching, you're in suspense, and then all of a sudden, it stops. What? Where's part 2? We don't know if there's a part 2. We don't know if there ever will be a part 2. You're held in suspense. And that's where we get Luke chapter 7, verse 11 to 12. In Luke chapter 7, verse 11, we have this. Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a great crowd went with him. As he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a considerable crowd from the town was with her. Nain is almost the same location as Shunem. I say almost is that we don't know if Nain and Shunem, so Shunem, the town in the Old Testament, in this passage in 2 Kings, and Nain here in this story in the New Testament, is the same town. But we do know is that they're located in the same region, far north of any population center. We don't know if anybody in this town knows about the story of the woman and the father who had a child. But we're going to find out later on that there's some clue. In verse 13 of chapter 7 of Luke, this is what happens. And when the Lord saw her, that is the woman, the widow, he had compassion on her and said to her, do not weep. Immediately, bells should go off. Wait. I've read this before. Wasn't it that Elisha met this woman, the Shunammite woman, and he didn't know what's happening to her? Well, how is it that Jesus knows? Because Luke writes, the Lord. The Lord. He's being ambiguous on purpose because he wants his Jewish readers to connect the Lord in this story to the Lord in 2 Kings, God. But this time, this Lord is a walking, talking, breathing person. Verse 14. Then Jesus came up and touched the bier or bier. And the bearers stood still. And he said, young man, I say to you, arise. What happens? The dead man sat up and began to speak. What is a bier? It is a coffin. That's why they have bearers for coffins. This guy was going to be buried somewhere. So he wasn't that we think he's dead, it's that he was dead. We don't know how long he was dead, it's just that he was dead. But here's where things take a curious turn. Bier or bier in the sense stands for a pile or a heap or burden. So when we read in 2 Kings, that story, when Elisha is on the top of the boy and he's doing this, he is receiving the dead boy's deadness. And the boy is receiving the stranger. So the boy is receiving the stranger, and that's what it makes him wake up. But here, Jesus is touching the coffin. Jesus is touching the coffin. In essence, receiving the deadness, receiving the burden of dead things, receiving the burden of not alive, receiving the burdens of what being dead is all about. Have you ever wondered, as you're going through life, struggling through life, how is it that sometimes I can't interact with my life in a very satisfying, welcoming way? It's almost as if I have to put more ounce forward and put more energy into it and just waste my time almost. There are times, right, in our life when we feel dead inside. Dead inside. Not because we're dead, it's because we've consumed, literally consumed, all the mire and the pit of deadness that surrounds us. Now, we're not going to call it deadness. We're not going to call it that. But that's what it is. It explains then why sometimes in life, when we try to interact, it feels like it's bringing me more deadness than being alive. And the more I interact with it, it brings me down, not up. It gives me anxiety, not joy. And it gives me certain amounts, a degree of grief and sadness, not happiness. See, that's what Jesus did when he touched the bier. He took upon himself the burden of deadness. Yes, this guy is dead. But he's taken in all the things that makes him dead. What is it? His inability to move and function. his inability to work and to do things right, to think, to conjure things up in his head. It's just not simply it's not just simply that he cannot breathe and cannot move and cannot function. Yes, that's all true. But it's more than that. It's being able to move and to do the things that is what he is meant to do. That is what makes alive, right? Being alive is not simply that you breathe and move and walk and talk and take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. That's not what being alive. That's not what we're talking about when we say we're being alive, right? That's not what we're talking about when we say we're living, right? That's not life. Life is when I take this breathing, talking, being, and I do things into my life. Do things so that almost as if I breathe life into the life I am living. That's what Jesus did here. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people." That is when we know the circle has closed. That these people, they could see the connection. Oh my God, this man, Jesus, is like that great prophet, Elisha, who restored that widow's child, or that woman. But the story is not just that it's closed, it's that it's fuller. How is it fuller? For the father, in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 20, lifted his son and gave him to his mother, and then he died, and that's it, right? And a great prophet was needed to resurrect this child so that this child could breathe in a stranger. But see, Jesus is the complete picture, because that person, Jesus, is lifted by his Father when he is dead, but is resurrected on the third day. That life he gives to you. That life he gives to you. A resurrected life. Not new life to sustain this one. Not new life to sustain this present one. This new life to sustain whatever it is to sustain this. It's a resurrected life to sustain all life. All life. Past, present, and future, and eternity. That resurrected life. And that can only be received by the person of Jesus. Or is this report about Jesus Christ spread through the whole Judea and all surrounding country? See, what are we satisfied? Am I satisfied with the name Jesus? Or am I satisfied with Jesus gives to me? What does he give to you? Righteousness, salvation, sanctification, blessing from heaven. But are you satisfied by the person? See, when I talk to my mom, when you talk to your mom, they sometimes say, "I am so pleased by how you turned out." But you know what else they say? That you are still their child, regardless of how you turned out. Are you not? It's like they can never separate
who you are to when you are a baby. Because who you are is what they marvel at, constantly gaze at, and love adoringly. And that never changes. No matter how much of a failure you think you are, or how much of a failure you think they think you are. In God's eyes, it's the same way. That we would lovingly adore Jesus, his person, his nature, his qualities. Yes, to love his righteousness. Yes, to love what he gives to you. But more than that, to love him. To love him as a person. Do you love him as a person? That's what this story is about. That's what satisfies, you see. If we try to mess with the story and say, I just want to love Jesus because he gives me this, because he gives me that, because he makes me do this, and because he makes me do that, that we're not loving Jesus. And we're not modeling after Jesus. And we're not chasing after Jesus. We're chasing after the things Jesus gives. And that, my friends, is idolatry. Do you love Jesus? Do you long for Jesus? Church, do you gaze after Jesus, chase after Jesus, long for the day that you can be with Jesus, side by side and not invisible? That is our story. To be satisfied, simply Jesus. Simply Jesus. To love him and to know him, who he is, what he has done, not what he gives. It's important to know what he gives. And I'm not denigrating it and throwing it in the trash. But what's more important than what he gives is who he is. Who he is. To study who he is. After all, that's what marriage is to. To know more about the person that you married every single day of your life. It's the same thing when we're married to Jesus. It's to know him every single day of our lives. To know him and to know about him. Let's pray. Oh Lord, we come to you, Father, that you would present us to the Jesus that we love, that we want to love. That this name, Jesus, will be so captured in our hearts, because it is that life that we long for. And it's that life that he gives. But help us never to receive that life apart from Jesus. And never let us to adore that life separated from Jesus. But to always and always to know the name of Jesus and to love the person of Jesus. To magnify and glorify the nature of Jesus and all that he is. So now, may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and you may your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.